August 15th, 1977, 2:16 a.m. In a small radio observatory just outside Delaware, Ohio, a signal cut through the static. No warning, no pattern, no second chance. It lasted 72 seconds. That was it. But those 72 seconds changed everything. The man who saw it, Jerry Amon, wasn't supposed to be there. He was a volunteer for the SETI project, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. He wasn't looking for aliens that night. No one was. He was just checking data, line after line, thousands of characters from the sky, printed on paper. Nothing ever stood out until it did. 6EQUJ5. That was the sequence. 6 letters and numbers, bold, loud, mathematically impossible to ignore. He circled it in red ink, and beside it he wrote just one word: "Wow!" That word, scribbled in the margin of a dusty computer readout, would become the most mysterious footnote in the history of modern science. The wow signal. But what was it? Where did it come from? Why did it never repeat? And why, 45 years later, do some believe it was the only message humanity ever received? The big-eared telescope was enormous, ugly. It looked more like a piece of Cold War artillery than a scientific instrument. 2 giant reflecting surfaces, metal sheets spread across the Ohio countryside. It wasn't built to find aliens. It was built to prove they didn't exist. SETI, the project behind the telescope, was desperate. Funding was low. Morale was lower. Congress laughed at the idea of listening to space. But the scientists, they kept listening anyway, because sometimes silence is louder than you expect. The signal came from Sagittarius, a place in the sky with nothing special in it. No bright stars, no black holes, no known satellites. The strength of the signal was extraordinary, too clean to be background noise, too narrow to be natural. It hit like a bell, perfectly shaped, perfectly timed. Then silence. Gone. No echo. No follow-up. Just that 72-second scream from the dark. Amon knew it was different. You can feel it in the tape he left behind. His voice shaking. Not excited, but confused. Nervous. Like he'd seen something he wasn't supposed to. Some said it was just a satellite, but it didn't match the orbital paths. Some blamed it on Earth-based interference, but it came from a part of the sky the dish only passed once. Others thought it was a glitch, but the system worked perfectly before and after. No one had answers, only red ink and silence. Weeks passed. Scientists ran the telescope again, pointed it at the same patch of sky. Nothing. They tried again. Nothing. They waited months. Still, nothing. But in that nothing, something else began to grow. Whispers, theories. What if it was real? What if, for 72 seconds, someone said, "Hello"? And what if they never said it again? In 1977, the world was full of noise, Cold War tension, nuclear tests, satellites in orbit, radio waves screaming in every direction. But this signal, it was pure, focused, intentional. It rose in intensity like it was aimed directly at us. And then it vanished, as if someone flipped a switch, as if they were watching how we'd react. There's a reason governments didn't want to talk about the wow signal, not because they knew what it was, but because they didn't, and that's far scarier. One classified memo, later uncovered in a FOIA request, included the wow signal in a list of low-probability, high-impact cosmic threats. Next to it were only 2 other entries: rogue asteroid, intentional directed intelligence. That last phrase, never explained, just circled in pencil. The astronomers never found the source. The government never issued a formal statement. And Amon, He never again saw anything like it. He kept the printout, framed it, stared at it for years, hoping. In 1985, 8 years later, SETI got funding for another sweep of the same region. They found nothing. The original equipment was dismantled. The big ear was torn down in 1998 to make way for a golf course. No joke. The site of the only possible alien message is now hole 14, and the sky stayed quiet. But the story didn't end, because something else was happening. Behind the scenes, in labs, in basements, in secret meetings, people were starting to ask the question out loud. What if the message wasn't a mistake? What if it was the first contact, and we missed it? That's when the silence became louder than the signal, the kind of silence that tells you someone out there is watching. And the worst part? It never came back. But that doesn't mean it's gone. It means we were heard. And now we're waiting for the reply. For 72 seconds, Earth was not alone. Then the sky closed, and science began to panic. It started in the control room. After Eamon circled the signal and whispered, "Wow," no one knew what to do. There was no protocol, no hotline, just one question. What the hell was that? In the following days, astronomers scrambled to verify the source. They pointed the big ear back at Sagittarius again and again. Nothing. They called in engineers, checked for interference, recalibrated everything. Still, nothing. And that's when the fear set in. Because if it wasn't a glitch, if it wasn't a satellite, if it wasn't from Earth, then where the hell did it come from? SETI issued an internal bulletin, urgent but quiet. It didn't mention aliens. It just called the signal anomalous and non-repeating. But inside the team, the word no one dared to say was contact, and they knew it. By October, the story leaked. A science journal published the full coordinates. Other observatories tried to catch it. None succeeded. Meanwhile, theories piled up like funeral flowers. Solar flare, signal bounce, Russian test, every one of them failed because nothing could explain the clarity, the precision, the intensity. Natural signals don't behave like that, and human signals are rarely that quiet. One scientist said it best. If this came from Earth, it came from someone far smarter than us. There was one attempt to dismiss it, a theory that it was caused by a military satellite's downlink. But the satellite in question hadn't been launched yet. Another theory claimed it was a reflected Earth-based signal, like radar bouncing off the moon. But the moon wasn't in the right position, and radio waves don't bounce that cleanly. It was like trying to find a scream in the middle of a hurricane and realizing the scream had direction, rhythm, and meaning. Behind the scenes, SETI began what they called the Watch, an unofficial round-the-clock sweep of the same coordinates. Volunteers stayed up for days. One man fell asleep at his desk and woke up in tears. He thought he'd missed it, but the truth was worse. There was nothing to miss. It never came again, and that kind of silence is not peaceful. It's loud. It's heavy. It feels like judgment. In December, a private memo from the National Radio Astronomy Observatory warned its staff, "Do not reference the WOW signal in public communication. There is no follow-up, and we do not support unverified speculation." Translation? We don't know what it was, so stop asking. But some didn't stop. Amateur astronomers, ham radio operators, students, They kept listening. Some claimed they heard echoes, weak, fragmented. One group in Argentina said they captured a shadow signal from the same direction, but it was corrupted, unintelligible, and never repeated. And then there was the incident in Canada. A group of physicists from the University of British Columbia attempted an experimental signal replay. They used the same coordinates, same frequency, and blasted a message back into the void. A simple phrase, "Is someone there?" The attempt went unreported. But 2 weeks later, their lab was broken into. Only the tapes were taken. No police report. No insurance claim. Just silence. The lead researcher left academia the following year, moved to a remote village in northern Quebec. He's never spoken publicly since. Meanwhile, SETI collapsed under the weight of ridicule. Congress laughed them out of the budget room. They were labeled dreamers, conspiracy theorists. The wow signal became a punchline, a relic, a red circle in the margin of a dead man's notebook. But some believed, some still listened, and they noticed something strange, a pattern. In the years following the signal, multiple unexplained objects were seen by military pilots, all near radio-sensitive zones, all moving at impossible speeds, all silent, officially unrelated, unofficially deeply unsettling. One classified report from 1980, obtained decades later, referenced an aerial phenomenon near the radio horizon and suggested a potential response to prior broadcast attempt. No further context, no name on the report, no agency admitted to writing it, but those who saw it knew. Whatever the wow signal was, it came, it left, and something may have been listening. That's when the fear changed. It was no longer about what the signal was. It became about who had the technology to send it and why they stopped. Because silence is never just silence. It's an answer. And what if the signal wasn't meant for Earth at all? What if we just intercepted it? What if we were never the intended audience, just the ones who happened to be listening at the wrong time? Years passed. SETI moved on. The world forgot. But in 2012, a professor named Antonio Paris proposed something new. Maybe it wasn't aliens. Maybe it was two comets, emitting radio signals as they passed. He tested the idea, simulations, data models, and in 2017 he declared mystery solved. But critics pushed back. The signal's frequency was too narrow, too precise, too short. Comets don't whisper like that. It was a theory, not an answer. The wow signal remained alone, a single, unrepeatable anomaly in the sky. It didn't match any known pattern, natural or artificial. It didn't repeat, but it didn't feel random either. It felt like someone knocked once and waited. The SETI archives show that in the months after the signal, smaller anomalies occurred, weaker blips in different directions. None were verified, none strong enough. But they suggest that whatever sent the signal may have moved or watched or left, a quiet anomaly logged in silence. Meanwhile, theories grew darker. What if it wasn't a message, but a scan, a probe, a test signal sent to measure how we react? Or worse, a bait, a way to make us listen so they can listen back. And still, the sky remained quiet, almost too quiet, like something had finished speaking and was now waiting for us to answer. And so, we return to silence, the kind only space can give. No follow-up, no reply, just a moment of clarity in an ocean of static. For 72 seconds, we heard something. Something that didn't belong to us. Something that didn't echo from Earth. Maybe it was a message. Maybe it was a mistake. But it happened. And that changes everything. Because now we know what to listen for. A signal that doesn't repeat, doesn't beg for attention, just speaks once and vanishes. Like a ghost, or a test, or a warning. The wow signal is still out there, in data, in memory, in myth. And maybe, just maybe, one day it will speak again. And this time, we'll be ready to answer. But what if it already did? What if we've been answering every time we launch a satellite, every time we broadcast, every time we beam our science into the void? Maybe the wow signal wasn't the first word. Maybe it was a response, a subtle reply to something we forgot we asked. And maybe it's not gone, just waiting, watching, listening, because space doesn't care if we're ready. It only cares that we're here. And the next time it speaks, it might not whisper, it might arrive.